Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Let's Get Printing. I'm your host, Zach Dewhurst, the Business Development Manager at DecoNetwork. When it comes to digital printing, DTG was one of the first decoration processes that came out 25 years ago for apparel. Now, over the last 25 years, DTG has greatly evolved, and then it's been impacted quite a bit by DTF printing, which has led to the misconception that DTG is dying and will eventually be dead. And that's simply not the case. Yes, DTF has been a game changer when it comes to decorating apparel and has impacted every decoration process, in particular DTG, but that doesn't mean that DTG will eventually fade out. Every decoration process is a time and place, and DTG has been the dominant go-to decoration process for printing one-of-one, print-on-demand apparel products. The big thing about DTG to keep in mind is that there's very different setups. You can spend $20,000 to $25,000 for a single platen machine. You can spend up to $100,000 for a single platen machine, which will have oversized printing, more print heads for faster capabilities, and or maybe additional colors. And then there's the two platen setup. So maybe you're going to spend a couple $100,000 and you're going to widen again the color range as far as going beyond CMYK. You're going to be faster, or maybe you're even mixing in screen printing with DTG. And then if you're a big player and you need to be pumping out thousands of shirts a day, you're going to be looking at the digital line setup, which is going to be very semi-autonomous, where one operator can be pumping out a lot of shirts a day. And if you have a nice little team going on, you're talking, again, a couple thousand shirts potentially very easily from a digital line setup, which is going to be around $1 million. So DTG definitely been impacted by DTF, and today we're very happy to have Fern Padilla help us dissect DTG and how to select the right printer if you're looking for a DTG printer setup. Again, every decoration process is a time and place. Fern has a ton of experience when it comes to all types of decoration processes, including DTF, and he is here to share his valuable insight when it comes to selecting the right DTG printer for your market and business setup. But before we talk about DTG, we need to talk about our awesome sponsor, DecoNetwork, the all-in-one shop management software that allows you to manage your shop using one platform. No longer do you need to be using multiple different types of industry software to be providing stores to your customers, have a website with an online design tool and supplier catalogs, and then a back-end order management system. DecoNetwork does all of these things under one roof. That is why it is considered all-in-one shop management software. Visit deconetwork.com to do a demo today, and you'll see for yourself how DecoNetwork sits above the competition as being the all-in-one shop management software. Now, let's get back to the show. How's it going, Fern?
Sunny day in California. I'm good. Zach, how are you?
Good. I mean, I'm out here in Ohio, not like Los Angeles. We definitely are experiencing fall. Today's conversation is all about DTG, and DTG is a process a lot of people think is, fading away, Fern, but it's very much so the case. I mean, DTF has impacted the industry, every decoration process, but the misconception that DTG has been replaced by DTF is definitely not true. It's just DTG's had to find, a certain spot in the industry, and POD, I mean, it has always been the go-to decoration process over the last 15 years.
Correct. No, yeah, as you stated, yeah, DTG is a decorating method, and yes, there is frankly a new approach that allows you to decorate apparel. It's DTF, and frankly it just opened up because there's so many other types of technologies that work with DTF. You're getting a lot of noise, but it does have its lane, has its pros, it definitely has its cons, and that also applies to DTG. So me being a student in the game since it started, I saw my first DTG machine in 2004, sold our first machine in 2005, and been at it ever since. So yeah, we've seen the evolution, we've seen what it does do and what it doesn't do, and all the pits and valleys along the way. But there is clearly a common denominator about it being an apparel decorating method. It has its definitely its flavor profile. As you alluded to, POD, that has been in our world and aggressively growing exponentially, and this print-on-demand technology, frankly, DTG, has been a big part of that, when we're printing about those individual shirts in the mass personalization business that we're in. Absolutely.
And like you said, DTG, 2004, we're talking about 20 years. You've seen a lot of evolution over those 20 years, and the quality of the prints and the cost of the prints. One thing that hasn't changed the entire time is probably the most important part of the process, and the worst part is pre-treating. And it's still the number one factor and most overlooked thing. Because that's one of the reasons why DTG wasn't always loved. I mean, that, and it's been kind of limited to cottons, depending on what printer and ink you're using. But pre-treat, Fern, that's always been the thorn in the side of DTG. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree, but there's certain credos that we, as my company and my organization, has been following since the beginning, and it's a credo that definitely has made that learning curve and that distaste for pre-treat substantially less. Okay, now if they go through employee turnover, which a lot of the customers that we deal with go through, and they don't train them properly, I want you to pay attention to the word train. If you are trained, if I am such a believer that if you get trained properly, the learning curve goes from here to here, and with the right support system, whenever you have that magic question that people that know, that makes that world that much easier. But yes, when there's, let's just talk about other factions, other equipment that are also DTG. I've often heard that, hey, some people just deliver a box and watch these videos. Here, go to my Facebook support groups. And as much as I appreciate people trying to contribute proper information, there is a lot of bad information out there. So it's like, be careful who you work with in that regard, because yes, the pre-treat process has been definitely beat up. And I understand why, I really do. But when you know what you're doing, when you are trained with the right deliverables, then that whole conversation just goes away. But is DTF still relevant? Absolutely. It's something that's not fun and exciting. The last show that I managed to say a quick hello to you because I knew you were busy, but I did purposely go over there to talk. I wanted him to talk to some of the manufacturers, i.e. Sanmar. I show you, Jason Murphy, I would suspect. I've known Jason for a very long time, and I asked him point blank. I know that because we've done some testing for you. Where you're already DTG ready shirt because it's pre-treated everywhere. Are you guys slowing down with that? And he goes, absolutely not. So being able to see it from that level, because they study their information, they have they challenge, they look at this from a global perspective. So I trust their vetting process, and basically there is an adjustment, don't get me wrong, but there's also a much wider audience, and that wider audience is where are enamored towards the DTF because of that disdain towards pre-treat. But no, I 100% disagree. If you're trained properly, you maintain your equipment, those two simple rules make a world of difference. So frankly, our experience on customer retention, on people buying more equipment, that is still valid. We do go through seasons. We're always busy around Christmas season, like we're supposed to be. It does slow down in January and February, and we are seeing, a little lesser than the year before, and a little lesser year before. But conversely, we're seeing it because they're going into the sheets a little bit more. Or again, as I mentioned, they probably lost an employee or two, and they don't want to bother with relearning the pre-treat process. It's just that easy. And as you know, and I know, we're in the convenience world. Everybody wants the easiest path, no matter what. The big guys are the ones that study, everything through its spreadsheet. No, it's cheaper and faster to do it this way, DTG, pre-treat, or it's faster to do it that way, because at the end of the day, they're looking at their net sum. What is my end result? That's really what matters to the big guys. The smaller guys, they don't look at that. They look at it, what's more convenient, and I get it. A lot of them are wearing a lot of hats. So that convenience does have a price, and people do like it. Absolutely.
Well, that's when using the latest and greatest technology does also make life easier, because one thing I've seen in the big shops that do a lot of DTG, if you're going to do hundreds or thousands of shirts in a day, Fern, you're probably using a barcoding system. And that barcoding system is going to allow you to know exactly how much and where to put so much pre-treat down based on all of your variables, the color of the shirt, the weight of the shirt, the print itself. These are, the barcode system can really streamline the process. And I've seen it be used with several different types of machines out there. But yeah, it just depends on the system. I love your point about the ready-to-print shirts. I've always found those shirts, Fern, to be extra soft as well. I like to use them even for not DTG, just because they feel like some of the nicest shirts you could possibly print on. So I do like that option for those who don't want to make the investment. When I cringe is when I see pre-treat manually sprayed, because I think you're just asking for some potential problems there, just because using a Wagner spray or something, Fern, I just don't see how you can be accurate with that compared to using a pre-treat
No.
applicator.
But remember, a lot of folks think they're entrepreneurs, and this is not how you cookie cut and build a business. Can I see somebody, again, because remember, we cater to the cottage sector, a lot of people that are really scraping those coins to buy the technology. So I get it. Let's support you with that. But we also paint the road that you'll be calling us in a couple of weeks, because you're going to realize the inconsistencies. You're going to realize that somebody does it a little heavier than the other. And again, if you don't do it with the right tools, you're building a house of cards. You really, really are. You're going to bottleneck so quick and not be able to repeat and scale and have, hey, I ordered these shirts 6 months ago. Why is this batch different? When you don't have the proper tools. So yeah, barcoding, yeah, that has also, again, being a distributor of equipment and working with the entry level all the way to the big guys, we get to see all these tools. And barcoding, yes, the data that brings, when we're talking about our top tier customers, we call them whale printers. They have a fleet. I'm talking a fleet of machines, and the level of automation that you see in those facilities are just amazing to me, and I'm glad to be part of that journey. But yeah, barcoding, being able to grab that red shirt, position it where it needs to be, change the amount of pre-treat, change the size of the zone of the pre-treat, and go through all this autonomously. You're right. Technology is definitely making a difference in the pre-treat game with the big DTG players. I don't see that barcoding capability on the smaller guys, but it can be available to them, especially with systems like you have with DecoNetwork. I hear you guys have barcoding capabilities, and a lot of customers we deal with have an IT department that builds that workflow for them at the end of the day. But yeah, pre-treat is a big part of DTG. It is a sore point, as you mentioned, but there's a lot of advancements in technology to make that easier. Just got to continue down the road, but again, a different decorating method nonetheless.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what DTG machine you essentially use, pre-treat is going to be involved if we're going to be laying down white ink. Now, some of the printers out there, there's a handful of big players when it comes to DTG that we think about. Brother and Epson are two of the biggest, especially when you're talking about a single platen setup. Then you have, some other players like Kornit, M&R, Omniprint. One of the things that's unique about the M&R equipment is that they actually built the pre-treat machine inside of the encasement, and which also at times is like, whoa, you're spraying a lot of glue right next to print heads. It's a little scary to me. But I mean, I've seen it in action. They can be very impressive. So doesn't matter what machine you go with, big, small, pre-treat is going to be involved. You've got to cure that pre-treat. Although, again, something I've seen different with the Kornit is they often will do a wet on wet So it is interesting too. There's a lot of chemistry that goes behind pre-treat and the ink being used, and just the whole formulation behind it. Fern, I know when I always use my brother printer, you were always carrying that pre-treat for at least 30 seconds with a heat press typically, but you can also cure pre-treat without a heat press. Is that correct?
That is correct. Because, now, as we become a little more versatile with different fabrics, different hands, when screen printers, when DTG was first introduced to screen printers, um, they didn't like it for a variety of reasons, but more
No.
importantly, it was because of the hands. But back to your point, by drying it, it just changed their opinion through a dryer versus a heat press. A heat press, as you know, one of the key points is to dry the pre-treat, yes, but it's also to flatten the fibers. So if you had this burlap
Yep.
level type of shirt, very open carded piece of material, no matter what you do, it's going to look horrible, but it's going to feel great maybe to the screen printer. Uh, but yeah,
Hmm.
yes, you can dry pre-treat without a heat press. We've convinced enough people to say, hey, no, you're right. By us just drying the pre-treat through a conveyor driven, even hanging it dry. I've seen people hang it dry because they don't want that press mark. That's another variable that we had to contend with because a lot of folks are ready for retail. They want to sell this as soon as they're done, get it packaged
Yep.
up and go. So all these impressions mattered. So drying the pre-treat absolutely makes a nice difference, especially if you want to sell directly to the retailer and package it accordingly.
Fern, when I go through a trade show floor, I see three different types
Right?
of DTG printers. You see single
Right?
station machines, so single platen.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the two biggest
Right?
common are going to be Brother, Epson, and then sometimes you see like Omni has one of their machines. Then you start to see
Yeah.
the multi-platen presses. And that's what I bought
Mm.
back in the day that Brother used to sell, the Brother 782. They were one of the first machines or
Machine.
sellers of a multi-station press. And now when I think of multi-station, I see a lot of Aeon. And I know M&R has their Maverick and Cornette has a multi-station press. Now, those machines, back when I bought my Brother 782 15 years ago, you're talking around 50, 60K. These multi, station presses now, you're talking around 200 to
Plus.
500, depending on your setup. I mean, they are, and they do take up the printing up a notch, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then what I see third is the inline, where you need an entire room, a warehouse room, to be running this, and it's one synchronized workflow. So talk to us about these three and what you've seen, again, since the biggest impact in years has come about, DTF. How is it really kind of pushed and pulled these different types of setups when it comes to DTG printing?
Well, the wave patterns that I've seen here is, again, we work with what we have when it's available. So, as you know, 20 years ago, 17 years ago, everything started with just that singular platen. So, just the technology in itself was still in its early infancy, developing, etc. So, as the market continued to justify itself, to grow and have a higher need. Again, some companies like Brother, when people often ask me, what's next with Brother, I go, there's always something next with Brother. They're always gathering data. They're always studying their 10-year, crystal ball here of what to develop. So when we started with the single platen system and we saw the insatiable demand, that's why they jumped right away to the 782, which was a dual-headed system or dual platen system. Let me rephrase that. Has more than two heads. And that was, the beginning point of being able to cater to the large internet enterprises that had that demand. And even that was in its early phase. I think Cornette, was singular platen at the time, expensive. Everybody is working out their kinks, no matter what technology, there's always a little bit of something that's going on. So It's important you have somebody behind you to make sure they take care of it. But again, the second stepping stone was into the dual, and it did make a nice difference, but it also priced that machine out of the average Joe. The average Joe, like I said, back to the cottage sector, they're going to stick with that singular platen. If anything, they're going to buy another single platen machine. But the guys that have, these guys are just happen to print T-shirts, but they're really IT guys, and they code all day long. They write code they're doing this for their internet-based organization. Those are the ones that are willing to pay, again, these other numbers, up to $1 million. Brother now has stuff that allows us to autonomously, with barcoding, with pre-treating, with pressing, with hoodies, all of it individual, being able to produce one at a time with one operator. All that is in between. Kornit, again, that's another animal here. They've had free reign for a while with their product. Great product from what I have, very expensive, and you definitely need to know what you're doing. Made a big dent, and I think Aeon, has been around for a while, but I think they're just, as of late, starting to make a dent into the market. I could be completely wrong. You probably have more insight on that. But I have been working with entry level, mid level. I see the patterns. From the mid level wanting to grow bigger, I've definitely seen those explosions, and especially during the COVID period. But everything is just about cheaper, cost per print, faster, more automation, and depending on which part of the market you're catering to, you buy that technology. That simple.
And something you were kind of alluding to right there, your consumable costs do go down with your more expensive printers, your bigger setups, because of the bulk ink delivery and so forth, correct?
Absolutely. We do have, like with the brother program, we do have what we call shelf cassette pricing, or then you could buy seasonal bundles, which again puts you, let's talk cost per cc. I think you're at 32 cents a cc right now when you buy off the shelf. You can buy by the case, because let's say during spring is when you're really busy, or Christmas you're really busy, but that's the only time, you could buy by the cases. That brings your 32 cents a cc down to 22 cents a cc. And then when you start getting to the bulk, as you mentioned, where you're now refilling your own little refinery, and that's the way I look at it with the brother. You have crude oil, let's call that the bulk ink. The refinery, the gassing, the filtering that the machine do, by the time it reaches the head, it's clean gasoline. So those machines are more expensive, but it makes all the world of sense to people that say, no, I'm paying extra 10 grand for the technology, but I'm reducing my costs from 32 or 28 to 14, my cost in half. I got the demand. It makes all the sense to go ahead and jump in that river. And then there's still a path. These companies continue to grow, or they're going to invest right away in some of the bigger technologies. You're automatically at 14 cents a cc. When you have certain amount of machines, it's opening up a conversation when we could bring down that cost per cc, because again, those are the big guys that are basically experiencing that big manufacturing paradigm shift with technology. And that's what they're calling for. We need cheaper ink, lower maintenance, more uptime, all these, and more autonomous, where again, we have to control our labor base and then make sure that the lion's share of the work is being done by these printers, but also cost effectively. Yes. So yeah, I remember when the 541s, what we were paying per cassette. I don't actually remember the price, but it was in the vicinity of $1. It really was. So from there to 14 cents.
I mean, I want to say, yep. Yeah, I want to say a CC was like every bit of 65 cents at least. So, I mean, it's come down substantially over the last 15 years. I mean, if DTG was still the same cost, it wouldn't be, as popular. But it is very cheap, and if you want to get a shirt out the same day and grab it off the shelf, pre-treat it, get it printed, and so forth, it's still the go-to print-on-demand decoration method. So
For
the
sure.
consumable costs have gone down. I also completely agree with you, Fern. The maintenance has gone down. They have figured out ways to make, the chemicals and the inks and everything not require as much maintenance and have that be more automated, not having to suck all the ink out of the lines and then run cleaning solution through them every week. I mean, it was a process. So it's all gotten better. And the thing I bring up all the time with DTG, Fern, is DTG taught all of us who wanted to go into DTF a lot. DTG helped propel DTF because we learned a lot of different things when it came to these digital printers, the print heads, maintenance, humidity. I'll tell you, Fern, I went through a lot of DTG print heads. I haven't got through any for DTF because I learned
All your fault.
humidity
It
is
was all
not
your
just a word. It's not just a word. It's important. um, so
Absolutely.
so
Go ahead.
let's go back to your single platen setup. So again, when I think of these, I think of mainly Brother, Epson. Brother is the GTX Pro. That is essentially their flagship single platen setup, and it comes in two different setups. One with cartridges,
Correct.
one with bulk ink. Right. So you have both types.
Correct.
How
Correct.
have you seen these be affected by DTF? Has this been affected more so, do you think, than the 600 or the inline setup since DTF?
Yeah, remember, there's two different audiences for the 600 and digital line series. That's a very specialized customer. And then we have our average customer pool, which is what, as you mentioned, the GTX and the GTX Pro Bulk. That's where these two types of customers belong. So in the single platen world, we are seeing DTF being, this is the adjustment. Yes, we love our DTG, but it's really easy, especially when I'm an individual. I gotta take the kids to school. I gotta do this. I'm wearing a lot of hats. The convenience of DTF is what a lot of people really like. Again, now if I'm printing on a ring spun shirt, that's the perfect substrate for DTG. There's no fibers, tightly woven weave, great prints. But, I know that being in the industry since the beginning. A lot of people will go to, their local Walmart, buy the cheapest shirt and want to print that. It's very open, a lot of fibers. And those guys is where now the DTF takes care of that. You know what I mean? When they have that little emergency. DTF, because it's technically a sticker for apparel, and that's why it is more convenient for all the variety of reasons. There's a lot of reasons, I even in my own showroom with my own family, whenever we're making a little gift, they're doing it in DTF. They're not turning on the pre-treater, etc. But for the student that has 35 shirts, a brand is very sensitive to how things feel. DTG and turning on that pre-treat, absolutely, that's the only way they roll. So again, it gives them the flexibility of work one or the other based on what they're trying to do. Let's talk about the big guys now. The big guys, they are looking at DTF from what all my resources gathering on two methods. One, because there is an insatiable ask for it. So naturally, they're going to listen and start looking at that. But I've heard there are a handful of customers that are giving people the two options. Go ahead and go through the experience of going to my website, choosing your shirt, whatever color, uploading your design as we're all used to. But at the end, they give you the option, do you want to DTG this or DTF this? And they're watching that data. Guess what? DTG is still a really strong data, but DTF is having nice spikes along the journey. I've also heard that DTF, it's a different workflow. It really is compared to DTG. And depending on where you are in your business, whether you're going from a cottage space with a lot of single machines jumping into the automated systems, I see a lot of DTF being introduced there where they're aligning DTF, for example, hoodies. They send, because the hoodie is traditionally a little thicker. Sometimes it triggers the sensor in the machine a little more because you got to glue it down, whatever. So they like to use DTF for the seasonal part of their hoodie business. Now, if you got zippers, that's another. Sometimes it works nicely, sometimes it doesn't. Therefore, DTG makes a nice difference there. So that's where
Yep.
I see DTF is really strong in the cottage sector. And is using strategically in the growth in the big internet enterprises, and that's the way they need to. They got to look at numbers. That's all these guys do. They study the most effective, that the customers are happy. How does it work affect my factory floor? All those things are being measured all the time. So wherever it fits, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I recently, a client of mine that I've helped get set up with DecoNetwork, they just offer, essentially I would call it like muted pastel prints on tote bags and towels and blankets and so forth. DTF made no sense for their product. DTG was the perfect printing method for what their product is that they're offering. So, again, it's a
Yes.
cliche. I'm probably annoying about it, but every decoration process is a time and place. Just based on what I see at the shows is, if I could spend, it's the utility factor of DTF as well. For right around the same amount of money, you're presented DTG versus DTF. And around the same amount of money, there's just a lot of competition there that DTG just didn't have before DTF. But like you're saying, Fern, there's definitely pros to it. I mean, the hand. If you want a softer print feel, DTG is going to beat DTF all day long. It just is. Because like you said, it's like you're stamping a sticker on a shirt when you're DTF printing.
Correct. And I'll argue with that a little bit because I've been caught on that where I'm sure-footed. I do know that DTF, being in the early phases, with a lot of adjustments with the art, and that's the key part, adjustments with the art, you can make it feel good. Adjustments with the volume of ink, adjustments with the type of powder, but you notice adjustments to make it feel good. That same challenge we had with the tri-blends in the DTG front. Hey, the right amount of pre-treat, the right shirt, all the above. But I do feel that DTG by far requires a lot less learning curve. A good quality print file is always good to get a nice print, but a good pre-treat process, you're going to always have that nice hand, especially if we're going down a conveyor dryer versus a heat press. And then when we're talking about that same process with a DTF, there's a lot that you now need to be really good at Photoshop. You gotta, or buy these automation tools that'll half-tone a lot of these files. You got to know the intensity, the levels of the adjustments you got to do to get the result that you want. So there's a little bit of experimentation, but ultimately I know that that'll get closer and closer to DTG. So hopefully I'm wrong, but I do feel that there, as me and you know, we're students of the industry, there is a clear lane, but then technology slowly starts to stitch these things together and makes it quite nice. It'll never be the same, but who are you selling to? That's the other major important part. Some people care, most of them don't. So that also supports the DTF.
Right. That's the other thing. Yeah, they don't. And hey, I totally agree about the half toning and all that. The problem I have is every time I see it demoed or anything, yeah, we want to knock out colors and let the shirt come through. But if your example is always going to be removing a black background going on a black shirt, yeah, that is the easiest situation. But if the customer wants a photo printed and there's no color to knock out, there's nothing I can do. I mean, yeah, I can do some things, but a box is a box. Right. And a box is going to feel like a box for most decoration processes, but it's going to feel a little bit better with DTG. A little bit.
Don't be in this. Yeah, I totally get it. But yeah, it's again, it's
Fern,
just
what is,
as you mentioned, it's.
What's a GTX Pro setup without the bulk system going for these days?
There's always a little promo going on, but right now, figure a GTX Pro. We're talking about, I think, 20,000, 19,995 is the going rate for the machine. When it was first introduced a couple years ago, it was selling for 25,000. So you could still see it's holding its legs for a bit. And currently, Brother does have a 0% interest with that particular model. What that tells me, it's good. Brother's using their own money. As you know, they're a 4.9 or 3.9 billion dollar company. Their own money is being used on this equipment, which tells you the success rate that they've had with reliability of the equipment. They're not worried about the equipment not functioning. They're not worried about distributor channel teaching their people right. They'll feel good about leaving their money. So that says a lot in my opinion. But that is the price right now. And an average ticket is probably in the mid to late 20s, because if you don't have a pre-treater, there's an investment there. If you don't have a heat press, there's an investment there. Maybe you want to subscribe to the new powderless, the PTF from Vastex, so you could do DTF. So again, still a great business opportunity for 20 to 30, depending on how you started off. Then you could jump into the GTX Pro Bulk. So that is typically the next jump that a lot of my audience, when they buy their GTX, now they realize, hey, I built up a demand here. I got a good business. I'm not worried about spending that extra 10 grand on the equipment, because I'll make it up just like that, just by that 14 cents a cc versus the 32 cents a cc. That same exact print just cost me half now, with everything else being equal. So that is where Brother's at right now with the GTX Pro Bulk. They're at 36.5, and I think the current promotion right now, they'll give you $5,000 worth of white ink, or and this is only because a lot of people that jump into the bulk already have a pre-treater, but let's assume that you don't. You could buy the latest pre-treat maker 5 from Schultz, which is a great machine, and they made some really nice differences. I finally started touching one the other day. I go, whoa, this doesn't let me make any mistakes compared to the previous generations. But back to the point. Right now, they'll give you that for the price of a basic, which is about $3,800. So those two platforms, the GTX Pro, GTX Pro Bulk, 20,000 just for the machine, 36.5. 25 to 30 full package, and then let's say late 30s to early 40s for a full package on the bulk. But like I said, most folks buy a bulk, it's because they're in the game. So they're just buying the machine. It makes it easier for them to jump into it. Then usually from there, then we start the other category. Go ahead, the inline guys. That's where the 600. Love that machine, 4 print heads or 6 print heads. Well, no, excuse me, 6 colors. Let me change all that. 4 print heads. That one has the capability of printing 24 by 24, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the DTG spectrum, and especially at that price point. We're talking about $79,000 for that particular unit. So you could see right away, just in the pricing, I'm shifting my audience. Okay, cottage, DTF, entry level, single platen, and then massive platen, big investment. But this is also the same system that plugs into the inline systems. So you don't have to worry about investing in something that you can't grow out of or grow it into something else. A Brother has designed it where that machine will plug into the Digiline series if that's the direction that you go. But we're at about $79,000 for the CMYK on that one, and then we're right around $94.5 for the 6 color, which has the 2 extra colors. So when you gotta have those particular, and frankly, those are outselling the other ones from what I'm seeing. And that machine also right now is being embraced in the streetwear area because of its oversized print, and these guys printing limited runs. I'm hearing some of these guys are selling these shirts for $1,000 a piece. I go, it's insane. The art is ugly, but because it was on that artist, that celebrity, and it was a limited run, and the way they do their marketing and their drops, that recipe for success, the $79,000 is nothing because they're making that return right away with that level. So How do you use your tools? How do you use these on-demand tools? We got them, man, and it's exciting to be part of this thing going on in our generation right now with technology. Really, really is. And the
No, and
last would be the
I've
digital
seen the
line.
600, but
Go
I've
ahead.
seen the
Okay, yeah.
600 several times. The 600 Fern with the additional green and orange colors. Oh, it does open up the color gamut there. I mean, they can definitely hit some nice colors, and I agree. The oversized, you talk about DTF. DTF filled, what I often see. Hey, it's a hassle to DTG or screen print a sleeve. It's easy to DTF it. It's a hassle to go, in a certain spot. DTF is a better fit. When it comes to DTG, I feel like that's what happened with oversized prints. It became the go-to method for situations like that, and that's how you do take, like you're saying, a $6 blank and turn it into an $80 or $100 T-shirt or more by throwing in $3 worth of ink on it.
It's just one part of the whole process, and that whole process, the lion's share is how you position it. And with Instagram nowadays, with TikTok, with the exponential eyeballs, with the fun energy behind it, yeah, you build that value. But you're right, what it costs is nothing compared to being able to deliver it right, and that's where your premium pricing comes in. Even some of the guys I work with in the creative spaces, they even design their boxes that they're going to put the shirts in, okay, to justify the price points that they're selling them at. So that's the level that you can play with this technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all it's all about the right tool in the right spot. How are you using it? Understanding it. DTG is here. DTF is here. HCV is still here. Specialty more so than the other stuff, but because it is more convenient to do this, and just being able to work with it and have fun with it all the way through. But the last thing on the brother lineup, that's when you have your digital line series. These things are just amazing. Yep. I'm sure you saw it at the last show where everything is automated and with minimal labor. I'm talking self-adjusting platens, self-indexing shirt. When it's doing it'll actually, you could tell it if it's a CMYK. Guess what? I don't need to press it at the end. All this back to when we first started this journey and this conversation, a barcode. That barcode information just makes everything dance the way it's supposed to, and it's exciting to see that. Again, I've been in the trade a little over 35 years now. I started with embroidery, and that's technology, but just to see in this short snap of time, the past decade, if not just shy a little bit more than that, it's been a fun journey of seeing that paradigm shift, the manufacturing from plurality down to singular, with automation, with tools, with and it's all just a piece of art. At the end of the day, it's a piece of art on a T-shirt, and they're monetizing the heck out of it.
When did inline really start coming about, Fern?
I would say in the past, I think Kornit was one of the first ones to the game. They're the ones that opened up the eyes. Everybody wanted to get there, but again, the industry had to continue to prove that, hey, this is something that's needed. So I would say in the past 3 years is when I started seeing the first spike, the first natural rise. The challenge was, and this is during the COVID periods, is where the supply chain was affected. So I imagined it could have grew more. It was trying to grow more, but there's just the logistical problems from sourcing this, containers that, the cost of material going up. It just slowly disqualified everybody. And even real estate, when real estate was just getting stupidly expensive, people said, you know what, I did not expect this in my business plan. Let me slow down a little bit. Or I ran out of room, or I ran out of power. All these things affected the growth path of the larger systems. I think we are going to start seeing some continued growth because some of those perils that I shared about, the COVID periods, those are somewhat under control right now. The demand is there, therefore the price can come down a little bit, but there's still an insatiable thirst for this, where hey, I got to start making decisions now if I want to get up 6 months from now or 3 months from now. That used to be, I need to start having a conversation now so I could be ready in a year from now. So you could see it is the time to deliver equipment is getting shorter and shorter because there is, back to DTG being relevant, all this technology we're talking about, all this growth that we're talking about is still DTG.
And Fern, let's talk a little bit about output, because you're going to go with
Okay.
the bigger setup often because of speed. We've talked about some of the machines, your consumable costs go down because of how we're delivering the ink. Sometimes we're opening up the color gamut because we have more than just CMYK, but a lot of it does come down to speed as well. So
Mhm.
GTX Pro or GTX bulk ink delivery system, it's going to be the same speed. What roughly, how many dark full color print? Let's just assume, I know there's a lot of variables, but full chest print, how many shirts might I get out an hour on a GTX Pro?
Okay. GTX Pro in the dark world, I'm going to say the early 40s. Early 40 dark shirt prints, assuming that it's the same print, meaning I'm just basically loading a shirt and hitting the button, loading the shirt and hitting the button. That number
Yep.
will come down just a little bit if you're in the variable game because you got to wait for data transfer, verify
Yep.
that this shirt goes with that order. So there's a couple other stop gaps, but it's still a autopilot nonetheless. So for early 40s in the dark, and then it gets even faster with CMYK only. So I'm a big believer CMYK only.
Oh
Faster,
yeah.
less cost of ink. The shirt is more lesser expensive. At the end of the day, as long as the design looks great, as long as, hey, let's get some ribbing, a different color ribbing on your shirt, and to support that design, and you're getting your nice profit on those. But you're talking about 55 for CMYK for both the GTX Pro or the Pro Bulk. Because the only difference between those two machines is one has that refinery.
Yep.
Other than that, everything else being the same. So those are the numbers there. Let's talk about, and remember, all this, I could achieve these numbers because it is a one-pass printer. Like
Yep.
most other machines in
Mine,
this
mine was not
entry-level
that way back in the
sector.
day.
Well, but it was fun watching the 782. That's definitely for sure. The way it was just going back and forth, just shifting away. It was fun to video. I do remember that. But yeah, we're one pass printing, which allows us to achieve those numbers consistently. It's not today was in a good mood. In the morning, I had to wake it up, burp it a little bit, do all the things that I keep
Yeah.
hearing people are doing, and they call it a business. No, turn it on, just agitate your inks if that's the case, and just you're ready to go. But those are the numbers. Now, when we go to the 600, that is a four-headed animal. It's not twice as fast, but it is significantly, I'm going to say about 35% faster with that particular
Wow.
process. That one, you're talking about in the neighborhood, I take some notes here, of 52 on the dark shirts with white ink, and we're in the 65 for CMYK only. So you can see it has a nice bump just because of those four heads.
Yep.
Then when you get into the
And then
digital
what about an
line,
end
that's
line?
where that's a different. We're talking, I think about 180 shirts an hour. But remember, this is with one operator. Let's call it 1.5. I always want to put that half in there for reasons X. But you're talking about each one individual. If they were all the same, you probably get a little better number. But for the most part, in the mass personalization game plan, you're talking about 180, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less on that particular setup, and that's the 2400. It will be less when you have the two-headed model. That number escapes me at the moment, but yeah, those are all the potentials.
Wow. I mean that's a lot of output. And I've been in a shop that did pump out 2 to 3 thousand shirts a day. They weren't using an inline setup, but they had over $1 million worth of equipment. And that brings me to the
Mm.
question about, like the digital line. What might you be looking at roughly? I heard the number around 20. around 36, around 69, 96, and digital lineup, 180 shirts an hour. What might that be running?
The machines themselves were in the 3/4 mil and up. It depends on the configurations. There's quite a few. It all looks the same, but there are some hard interviews that take place whenever somebody's getting ready to place one of those orders. So yeah, that's a whole different realm. Let's just call it $750,000 to $1 million setup is what we're talking about there. They have their external, it's called the central source. Most people get it, but it's technically an option. The central source is where you literally, I look at it like a tanker, your gasoline tanker, where your fuel's in there, and that just plugs into your system, and it can actually, you put the barrel, just put some hoses on it, and it mixes it for you. It can put different chemistry in there for you, all the above. So yeah, again, there's a bunch of options, but to answer the question directly, your $750,000 to $1 million setup.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's not. We're not worried about it. They don't care about the price. They know that demand is there. They understand the shift going on in mass manufacturing. It's happening, guys. It really, really is.
No, I mean, I've spoken with M&R. I've spoken with Brother. I know they're selling the machines at the shows. I mean, you see them at least. I typically see the setup at 2 shows each year: Printing United and Impressions Long Beach, because I mean it's a lot of work to be setting up that big of a machine, but they're always there, and they're probably the biggest machine in the room, even bigger than most screen printing setups. But yeah, I mean the misconception that DTF has killed DTG, you probably hear it quite a bit, Fern, and it's just not the case. Where I see it driving, just based on what I've seen, it's the bigger setups, more so than the smaller. That's not to say that it's gone by any means, but do you kind of agree with that? Do you think that DTG is you not to say you go big or go home, but that's the 600s and the digital lines, they are growing more probably than your single platinum GTX Pro setup. Is that fair, or am I just kind of pulling?
Remember, this sector, the 600 and above sector, it's a limited audience, okay, and limited deliverables, and that's going to change year to year. So the growth is going to be there, yes, but not as rapid as fast as people want it. Over here with the single platinum systems, much easier, much faster to build, much more affordable, a whole lot of more potential customers. So we are seeing a fervor of activity there. And fortunately, because the Brother can also do DTF, that's another reason that keep that thing going there. I go, you get the benefit, but it takes a very thorough explanation, and that's when people come to our showroom. We show them the samples, we show them the differences. No, but somebody's just trying to sell me a DTF machine. I go, no, we're trying to sell you a technology. Let me show you how to use it, and you could use it this way or that way or that way. And we like to think that we do a great job at listening and make sure we prescribe the proper equipment to that end user at the end of the day. But yeah, fun times, that's for sure. Again, I say that because it's been since 2005. We're almost at 2025, 20 years I've been playing with DTG, and it is adjusting, especially after the COVID period. We were redlining, our customers were redlining their organizations. Now it backed off a little bit, and it's stable, but it's still very, very viable. 100%.
And just want to finish with the thought that you just brought up. A DTG machine can still be used to DTF. Quality-wise, Fern, have you seen any type of, is a traditional DTF setup better than using a DTG printer to print DTF? Or do you think if you send the artwork correctly with the right rip and so forth, it's just as good as printing on a DTF printer? What's your opinion there?
Well, if I talk about Brother DTG specifically, remember, now we're talking about print heads, we're talking about inks, and then ultimately what substrate is it going on. The Brother platform was designed to do what it's doing. printing on textile. So guess what? My droplet sizes in the head are probably a little bigger than your 3200 print head, as you may know. That head, great head, is made from a great company, Epson, and usually the droplets are a little smaller. Therefore, I can get little gradients, but the trade-off is speed. The trade-off, what can be speed, let me rephrase that, can be speed. And as far as printing on a t-shirt, remember, that's what we're doing. We're printing on a t-shirt. Do I need this museum level of print, which is going to go on a t-shirt, which is your ultimate canvas? And are you going to go this close to see those benefits? The answer is no, and from my come from, I still like to think that people are doing this to monetize, be effective, all the things to succeed in this game. But print quality, I want to say probably the I-32 will print differently if I was to print on a piece of film. But when it's going on a shirt,
Okay.
brother, they both do a great print in the quality, but again, it's much faster, so the trade-off is that. So those are, my professional response to which one prints better. They both print great, but what are your demanding rules of your company? If I got to pump out, as you mentioned, 3,000 pieces a day, and I'm not going to look, my customer's not going to look that quick, I'm going to look at this type of technology, this kind of inks. If I'm going to print on DTF all day long, I'm just handcuffed to that. Great, but obviously it supports that lane however you're building your business. So I was asked this question just the other day, just on the printing brother DTG or printing brother DTF, and my response is, it's the same head, it's the same ink. The difference is I'm printing one on a shirt, one on the film, and the real answer is, how's it going to feel on versus a DTG or DTF? What kind of shirt am I printing on? 100%, a tri-blend, a polyester. Yeah. So that's where I can really give you a more polished answer. But at the end of the day, they both look good. Just what are the trade-offs based on your business model?
Yep. Well, Fern, you bring a lot of knowledge when it comes to DTG and all different types of decoration methods. I mean, that's why you're garmentprinter.com. That's an inside joke, everyone, between Fern and I.
Really,
Fern, I just kind of, yeah, wait. Now, Fern, I just kind of did your own plug, but where can our viewers go to learn more about, DTG or really all digital printing processes that decorate apparel?
Well, only because I want to hear you say it again, I'll let you do the honors. Where can those people come?
garmentprinter.com.
One day we'll tell why we're doing all this, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for giving me space to share my nuts here with all of information. Always glad to contribute whatever I can do to help you, help the industry, help educate. More than happy. Yeah, I do have the mileage behind me. Fortunately, I can help with this decoration lane or that decoration lane. But again, thank you for hearing me out.
Thanks again, Fern, and look forward to doing this again sometime.
You got it. Okay, thanks, guys.